If you've ever wondered who else has been a little bit low today, who else is doing their best to hold it together, how do I cope, and how can I make things better? These are the sort of questions that have led to us recording this podcast.
Join us, Stephen and Alan, your everyday average people, as we discuss with guests our unfiltered experiences of mental health, the highs and the lows, the signs and the symptoms, the strategies and the triggers, the impact and the lessons.
Whether you've experienced it yourself, know somebody who has, or just want to listen to the everyday mental health experiences of others, then this podcast is a safe space for you. So listen in and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, everybody. As the people who will be watching this on YouTube will notice, we're still in the same clothes because we've recorded this one after the other.
Back to back.
Yep. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. Good debrief just before,
Yeah.
So feeling like a lot of it's come off my shoulders. Turned it onto you now. So for those who probably don't know who you are, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Alan Falle. I'm a teacher. I teach PE at Victoria College, previously at Holier School, Jersey born and bred. Know you through football at the Rosal,
Yep.
number one club, followed by Newcastle United. And here to chat all things mental health.
Yeah, so this is a different type of chat because,
Very different.
as you said in the first episode, we're at different stages completely, and my story is very different to yours in terms of talking about it. So, well, tell us a little bit about what part of your journey you're on and what is your journey.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, to touch upon what you just said there, I think you're really different, aren't we? And I think that is I think that's quite a nice thing, actually. But to put into context where I am now in comparison to perhaps the last few years of my experience, this is, for all intents and purposes, one of the first proper in-person conversations I'll have about my mental health.
which is mad.
Yeah. I'll come and talk about why I'm wanting to talk about that more and why I'm happy to do so publicly in a second, because it's, there's a number of people that have had an impact upon my desire to go back to receiving support, which we'll talk about shortly. In terms of where I am now, I am doing better than I was 6 months ago. I'm doing better than I was years and years and years ago, but still trying to unpick really actually where am I in it all, and where's it all sort of stemmed from. I've got some ideas about where it might have stemmed from and sort of things along the way that have hampered or helped to make progress, but very much receiving support because I need it to improve as opposed to sort of maintenance. And I think part of the reason for that is, people like yourself a couple of years ago through the government campaign, and colleagues I spoke about in your episode, friends, various people that have come forward and said that they are struggling, have sort of made me reassess my own position. And I think in addition to that, probably my partner has helped me to reassess. So, I maybe thought I was in a better place than I was actually six or so months ago, if that's sort of the number I'm putting on it. So now, having evaluated that, I'm back to, not to square one at all, but back to a position of analysing and assessing and trying to better understand it. So actually part of this for me will probably be learning a bit more. I'll probably learn something about myself through doing this, whether this episode or the podcast in general.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, why did you say yes? Because we met 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Where I just had the idea and thought it'd be great to have you on as a co-host, which is how it will be from after this episode. But yeah, I didn't know your story. I just knew something. So I thought maybe I'd get you involved because you have a background. But why would you say yes to a podcast to talk about your mental health if you've never really spoken about it?
Because of all that, because of the stuff we spoke about in your episode, and because of the stuff that we speak about in day-to-day society about the stigma surrounding mental health, you know, I'm really fortunate to be in the position I'm in from a teaching perspective, where I have a, you know, I'm in a position at a school that enables me to have an influence of some description on hundreds of students. You know, there are nearly 700 students at my school, and having seen a colleague stand up in a staff briefing and then an assembly and talk about his mental health and the battles he's had and how he's worked to overcome that, and then seeing yourself and the guys that you spoke to as part of the government campaign come out and do similar, and then friends through football in my personal life that have said that they're struggling with something or other. This is so common. It's out there, and it's something that needs to be spoken about more. So I'm hoping that by doing so, it might encourage others to do the same. You know, there's loads of things that I've learned, positives and negatives, from trying to deal with my mental health, that hopefully I can share with others.
Yeah. So what would you say is, not to put, we said this in the teaser, that we've all got different experiences, but we're all diagnosed with the similar names. But if you were to put a name to what you struggle with, what would that be?
So, I mean, anxiety is a thing that impacts upon me on a day-to-day basis. If I look back to, I tried to think about this, and maybe the big difference between you and me in this is that, as we touched upon in your episode, you're very good at talking about it, and I think are in a position to have processed it properly and talk through. So I've got notes that I'll refer back to, but when I was making those notes and thinking through the sorts of things that I'd talk about, I tried to figure out the sort of chronological order of it all. When I really realized I had a mental health condition, the things that came up then were very much anxiety, and I was diagnosed with depression. That was 5.5, 6 years ago. The depression label at the time, and maybe I'll talk about this in a second when I talk through sort of the point at which I went and got that diagnosis, was, I don't know, maybe I was in sort of denial about it initially. Maybe I was displaying the stigma. Maybe I felt that was something that was too easily attributed to me. So it didn't really sit easily with me. On the flip side, it was a bit of a relief that I could put a name to what I was feeling and experiencing. But I think I then allowed that name, that label, to just sort of exist without doing a huge amount about it. I received some help. I went to see a counsellor through a charity on Ireland. I don't think I was really ready to listen at that point. I think I was willing to be there and engage, but not really willing to take it on board, and sort of thought that going through the process would be enough.
Yeah, I think you have to be fully in.
Yeah. Like I found it really hard to go and speak to somebody that I'd never met, because actually part of my anxiety is a social anxiety, and new people and new situations are triggers for me. So that in itself was tough, but I was willing to be there. I just wasn't really willing to go through the entire process properly to come out the other side. But for me, on a day-to-day basis, anxiety is the top one. That's the thing that affects me the most. The depression label, I think I still changed my mind as to where I sit with that.
So are you still not convinced that the diagnosis you got back then was the right one? Or
no, I think it probably was, but quite where I am, you know, we've spoken about scales and sort of our journeys, where I am in relation to that diagnosis of depression in terms of how I'm feeling now is hard to identify. I think the anxiety is the thing that I'm working on in particular.
Yeah.
I think I'm in a much better place in terms of the depression side of it.
Yeah, I think that sounds similar to my experience, and we'll probably see that this happens to a lot of people, that anxiety and depression sort of come together in a lot of cases.
Yeah, possibly.
For mine, it was anxiety and then led into depression, left depression behind and live with anxiety. And it sounds like, you're saying that you're in and out of that sort of depression, but the anxiety sticks around.
I think, again, it's hard to put an order on it, and the support I'm receiving now through Mind Jersey, the session I had the other day, was starting to unpick the real root of it. So looking at what might have caused my initial or might have started my journey towards a mental health issue. I think actually the depression and the low self-worth were there for a while, but only really came to a head when I started to experience the anxiety. So I think there's some sort of like deep-rooted stuff that had an impact upon how I felt about myself, and that's then caused me to have like an anxiety, particularly in sort of social situations and busy environments.
Yeah.
But still a lot to learn in that respect, I think.
Yeah, so you're at the very early stages of support.
Yeah, properly unpicking it. I mean, I've been seeing someone through Mind for a number of months now.
So how does that work with Mind? Because for me, I see my brain guy every 3 weeks. I mean, I don't know how it works with Mind. So,
from my experience with them, I basically went online and filled out a self-referral. The same self-referral that for years I have signposted students to, but not ever accessed myself.
Yeah.
So filled out self-referral, got emailed by somebody who works with them, who I won't mention by name. I've been seeing her for a number of months now, so we're on to like 8 or so sessions maybe. See her roughly every couple of weeks.
Okay.
That will vary. That's, to be fair, the length of time is usually dictated to her by my work schedule.
Okay.
So when I saw her earlier this week, she basically had already booked in X, Y, and Z dates, and I said, well, I can't do that one, I can do that one, can't do that one, can do that one. So I'm scheduled to see her another 3 times in the next sort of 7 or 8 weeks. So yeah, still early in terms of unpicking it. We've spoken a lot about coping strategies from an anxiety point of view, and now into sort of looking at the cause of all of it, trying to better understand what started me on the sort of journey to where I am now, and what might have had an impact upon who I am as a person.
Yeah. It's
deep.
Yes,
real deep.
Digging very deep.
And you know what? She knows that, and I know that. So we'd sort of set the agenda for our recent meeting when we last met. And she asked me as soon as I sat down, I said, so how are you feeling? I was terrified.
Yeah.
Simply because I don't know. Like, it's the fear of the unknown. And I don't know that I've got the emotional intelligence in myself to unpick it all, to be honest with you.
How do you feel when you come out of those sessions? Because, I've had sessions, deep sessions, trying to pick at not necessarily mental health related stuff, but other stuff. And, I come out feeling like I've gone 12 rounds with Tyson.
Yeah, heavy.
Yeah.
It varies, to be honest with you. Like I say, the first, basically my approach to receiving help this time. So I received help last time, and that was, when I say last time, 5-6 years ago, that was not successful because I wasn't willing to engage. I was not, we used to talk about persuasive communication through the A-level course at school. I wasn't somebody who was willing to receive a message. I wasn't really willing to listen and take that stuff on board. My approach this time has gone more the way that it would do with physical illnesses and injuries. That comparison is made quite a lot. I tore my ACL a few years back, and I was so strict with how I approached the recovery process to that I was learning about it. I was speaking to physios and PTs and whoever else to make sure that I did absolutely everything I could to make myself as physically strong as I could. And I guess just sort of in reflection, I was like, well, if I'm not willing to listen to people and accept the help that is available, what's the point? You know, how can I expect myself to improve or get better if I'm not willing to take stuff on board? So the first few sessions were actually, I just found it interesting. You know, suggestions were being given to me that I was aware of through the sort of stereotypical stuff that you hear suggested, and that teachers will share with students, and that school counsellors would mention within school assemblies and stuff. But through practicing it and talking about it and trying to take it into day-to-day life, more recently, I guess there's been more fear of those sessions because I know it's getting deeper. Yeah. You know, the last ones were, how can I cope better on a day-to-day basis? Now it's, well, let's go back to the really uncomfortable stuff and start unpicking that. And I don't know how ready I am for some of that at the moment. So they feel a bit harder, especially for somebody who, despite the fact I've got you sitting opposite me and 3 cameras on me, is somebody who doesn't particularly like talking about feelings and stuff.
This is why I asked the question as to why you said yes to the podcast, because I mean, this isn't just audio, this is everything. And we said off camera and mic that the people who you've spoke to, and I mean, you can, if you want to go into that, you can mention who you've spoke to about this, because it blows my mind that you've chosen.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, I say I've made sort of various notes that I want to touch upon, because there's things that if I wish I'd known when I first realised was an issue all those years ago. But in terms of who, I think it's probably worth going back to the point at which I realised it was an issue. And I sat at a family meal at a restaurant with close family. So my grandma, my auntie, my uncle, dad, brother, sister, partners might have been there. And I remember wanting to just disappear. Sat around a circular table with close family who I know and love and who love me, absolutely no threat there whatsoever. And I just felt tiny and barely spoke. And I remember my dad turning to me and saying, "You all right?" "Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah. Basically got in the car and broke down.
Were you by yourself?
Yeah. I was like, what is going on? Where has that come from? Like, I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to be there. I remember not wanting to get a dessert, which, as an eater and a lad who loves his food, I remember my grandma at the time saying, you're not getting one, because normally she would get one and I'd have hers as well as mine. And I just, like, all these things happening, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why, how's that happening? So I went away and sort of started to reflect on it. And this was 2017, quite early in 2017. And it took me, basically, I went away, thought about it, couldn't quite figure it out, start to experience that a little bit more. So I'd be fearful of social events. I would make excuses to not go to those events or to leave early. If I did go, I felt I'd needed to be there. I've always been early to stuff, but I felt like I had to be there from the start because I didn't want to walk into a social situation that had already started. I started to struggle with my sleep. So I was at points just not sleeping at all. And it just, like, something wasn't right. So I started to think it through, and eventually went to an on-island charity and went to see them, start to chat things through, and they suggested that those labels of depression and anxiety would be something I needed to consider that I might be struggling with. Went to see a GP. I don't know why. I guess second opinion and to try and figure out more.
So that period from when you were at the meal to going to the charity, did you speak to nobody?
No,
not a single person.
No.
Okay. So that's like the complete opposite as to why.
Yeah. Like no one. I don't know. I think partly because I didn't understand it myself.
Yeah.
So how could I tell someone something that I didn't understand? Similar to you in that very different time span. I was what, 26, 27. So much older, but not unaware of mental health, but people in my life hadn't experienced mental health issues that I was aware of. So trying to unpick that and understand that, and then be able to verbalize that as somebody who's not very good at talking about feelings, was something I wasn't particularly keen to do. So went to charity, and I'm deliberately not naming that charity, not because I'm trying to protect them. My experience with them didn't work because I wasn't buying into it. Went to a GP. Also went with depression. We talked about medication and various other things at the time. But then a few months after that, I started to basically write a letter to my family. So I think that would have been, that was tail end of 2017. And I know that because I got the letter up on my laptop earlier on to look at dates of when the file was created, and then I looked at when the email was sent. So I literally wrote this letter, put it into an email, messaged my dad and said, I'm going to send you an email. And the letter was for him, my brother and my sister. The start of the letter just said, look, if there's anything that could change your approach to me, you can't read on. Like, whatever the main outcome of this needs to be, that nothing changes. Like, I wasn't telling them because I wanted them to do anything or act upon anything. Quite the opposite. I wanted them to know so that they knew.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything to change. I didn't want an approach. And to this day, we've spoken about mental health, and there's been conversations where my family have acknowledged my experiences with mental health, but we've not sat and had a conversation with it. So that letter went to them in May of 2018. So over a year from the point that I realised something wasn't up, and about 6 or 7 months after I started writing the letter.
I know, I was going to say, because you said that you started at the end of.
So I'm not a talker.
Nope.
They've had another letter recently. So I'd said, I've gone back to receiving some support, gone to Mind. So I sort of wrote to them with a bit of an update to say, look, this is where I am now.
And that you're going to come and speak on a podcast about it all.
Yeah, they know about this. So it sort of escalated in the last week or so. So yeah, I guess for me, to go back to your question of why, because I don't want other people to wait a year and a bit to tell someone, because one of the biggest takeaways for me when I've reflected upon what I've gone through are, I really like your analogy of the back four. Yeah. For me, my back four would be people, and it'd be the people that I've been able to sort of share that with. And it's been consistent across the board in that I've been really clear with people that I don't have anything to change. So I messaged my, a couple of really close sort of best mates not long after I'd told my parents, or my dad and my brother and sister, and said the same to them. I said, look, just so you know, I'm going through this. Don't particularly want to talk about it. Don't want anything to change, but wanted you to know. We lost somebody when we were all at uni. And I guess I sort of wanted to check in and just let them know that I was going through something. So I had them on side, but under strict instructions to not mention anything. I had family on side, but again, strict instructions. And I guess more recently, my partner is, I think, finding it really tough, to be honest with you, but probably the one person outside of counselling that I speak to about it.
Yeah.
I mentioned in your episode, she quite openly has said that it baffles her because she's not experienced anything like this before. And we've spoken in the teaser and in your episode about that.
Yeah.
The difficulty of empathising if you've not gone through it yourself.
It is. Something you said before about, you mentioned your ACL, and that you tore your ACL how long ago?
3.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
So an ACL is a pretty hefty injury, and you said you went all in with all of the sort of recovery, and you're now running 2,022 miles,
kilometers,
with a ruptured ACL.
Well, yeah, it's
3 years
now,
ago. Yeah. But it's just going back to the whole, if you're going for support, you you fixed your ACL and you're running 2,022 miles. That's insane. I don't think I could do that. And you had a big injury. If you're wanting to get better, you have to be all in with these supports, with anybody, with whoever you go to, if it's mine, if it's another charity, if it's private, you have to be willing to be all in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't get better. And I'm sure if you didn't take that attitude with your ACL, you probably wouldn't have gotten better.
Well, if I'd skipped a step, I would either not have got to a point of being as healthy as I was post-op, or I would have ruptured it again, injured something else. A weakness would have gone through. So that is sort of what I'm trying to apply to.
Yeah.
Why
change it if it's your brain?
Yeah.
Why do we treat it differently?
And this is, again, going back to my partner. I'm really fortunate. She's gone to seek support from charities in order to try and better understand what I'm going through. So she's gone and had essentially counselling sessions, but to learn more about mental health issues.
And that's really good.
Amazing. But the same thing sort of applies there. If I were to hide that from her every day and not be willing to engage, and this, I need to engage with people more generally, I think, but someone like that, that support mechanism is there. I've got to use that.
Yeah.
Really fortunate to have somebody that's trying to learn more about it in order to better support me. And I think touched upon in your episode about our hopes for the pod and that one person might benefit from it. For me, if that one person is someone who is trying to support somebody, that is sort of magic in itself.
If you try to keep it in, trust. Like I've done my fair share of trying to keep things in and not say things, and honestly, it shows itself at some stage, and it's normally not very pleasant.
Yeah, I think that is something that in getting some support we've touched upon anyway. Like my coping strategy for me is to be busy.
Yeah,
but that is pure avoidance. So I'm really fortunate. Somebody asked a question about how do I cope with mental health on a day-to-day basis. To be honest with you, I get up and I go to work. I'm at work from early in the morning until quite often late at night. And I love it. I'm really lucky. I've got a great job, really enjoy working there, work with some great colleagues and great students. I like being busy, and that busyness at work has meant that I don't really need to think about my mental health whilst I'm there.
Well,
but I'm running away from it in some respect. That comes from when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, and I think when we reflect back on where this might have stemmed from and why I might have experienced the things I've experienced, my coping strategy back then was go and do stuff. Yeah. Sport, stuff at school.
And that's a type of mindfulness, but
yeah,
ideally you would want to be able to do and have mindfulness in your back pocket for when you're not doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think the difference between being busy and being mindful is that the mindful is a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Whereas I think mine was subconscious. I'm being busy to avoid thinking about it.
Yeah, you're burying it.
So, fortunate that maybe on a day-to-day I'm not really thinking about it, but there's things we'll come on to in a second that I do in order to cope with things when they do crop up.
So what does crop up? What sort of symptoms do you get, or what is
the things that in terms of symptoms and the things that occur now, similar to way back when. So sleep can be an issue. Anxiety is an issue. Same as what you said really in your episode, that sometimes it's clear as to why I am anxious. Could be all sorts really. Social anxiety is quite a big one. So big social events, new people, change of routine, things like that are sort of triggers for me. So that could be sort of panic attacks.
which is bizarre to hear because I would never have said that you were struggle with something like that.
I mean, I will.
We've been on a fair few socials.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where I will get to a social, and if that might be someone's birthday or whatever, and there's been stuff recently where I've got to the door, looked inside, and there's loads of people having a great time, and I've gone, nah, I can't walk in. So stuff like that crops up.
And you don't walk in?
I sometimes do, sometimes don't. Normally once I'm in and going, I'm all right.
I was going to say, yeah. So it's just getting past that.
Yeah, getting past it. So it's stuff like that, really. Again, I can stand on at the front of a crowd and talk about higher education without any massive anxiety, but it's change, it's big social situations, it's new environments, new people. That fear of sort of being judged or evaluated in a social setting are quite big for me.
And you've come on a podcast.
I know, but no one's here to judge me. It's fine.
Yeah.
I
disables comments in the YouTube channel.
Yeah, cheers for that. So yeah, it's things like that sort of crop up. I think the thing it's led me to go back to getting health is the impact that my mental health can have on relationships with people. Those people that I've mentioned that stick by me and support me, even if that support is by accepting my desire to not talk about it. Where that support is trying to find out more themselves about it and learn more about it. If I am not sleeping and allowing myself to become anxious and therefore stressed and irritable, it's going to affect others. And I don't want it to. So back to receiving help, I guess.
So is there anybody that's close to you that who has experienced mental health or
yeah there are. In terms of family, not to my knowledge.
I mean like quite close, because I do, but I'm not as accessible as your family are.
No one that I can sort of put an immediate finger on. I mean, I mentioned my colleague a couple of times who I work with quite closely, and people like him and people like you have had a pretty sort of profound impact upon where I am with things, but not people that I can that I would say I'm really close to, that I would regularly sit down with and chat to. More and more people in the last couple of years have come forward and mentioned things. So therefore my knowledge of various people having their own struggles is there. But it's not something that I was maybe familiar with from a personal life perspective. Talk about it a lot through work, students, and trying to support them and signpost them to things. But yeah, it's not something that I was massively familiar with before I start to realize that I was struggling with stuff.
Yeah. Did you, I'm still baffled by this first aid mental health thing.
Yeah.
When you came away from that, was there anything during that you were like, oh, wow. Or was it,
not really. So that course looked at, it was really interesting. So that course looked at different mental health illnesses, symptoms, things that you might be able to do to help somebody who's going through that. So it's all about, if you get somewhere and you realize that someone's having a panic attack, or you get someone and realize that somebody might be displaying signs of depression, bipolar, various things, what might you be able to do in the short term? They are not, again, I've completed that course. I'm by no means an expert or somebody that would be able to support people long term with those issues, but I might be able to help in the initial situation. I think the things that I came away from more than anything else is the social understanding of where different people are in different careers.
Yeah.
I was a teacher on that course. I mentioned in the teaser that there was a couple of people on there who were there solely to learn more because family members or children of theirs had struggled, and people through work, and just having that discussion and seeing that huge discrepancy of understanding was massive for me. But it was a really interesting course.
Yeah, that's so good that it exists.
It's mad, really, isn't it? When you think,
not
again,
Not
going back
back
to
in the
that,
day. No way.
that man up culture.
No way.
But even stuff like that, you know, just the fact that there's things like that that exist and we can talk about it and open up about it, I think are absolutely vital.
I know, and you've got big sports stars as well coming out and talking about it and saying like, I don't remember her name, but the one in tennis who just was like, "Nah, I'm not doing press conferences.
Yeah.
You know, find me. I don't care.
Yeah,
I just can't do it.
Yeah.
It's not."
Pulled out major events, all sorts.
It's just like
we've got to be able to put it first. I mean, same, you know, again, going back to that comparison to a physical injury, and that analogy is one that's helped my partner in particular. You know, if that, you know, if an elite sports person broke their leg, they wouldn't be playing sport. So if there's something that's having a profound impact upon them from a mental health perspective, why should they be expected to play? Why shouldn't they prioritize their health? So I think it's good, you know, we've got people talking out more and more about their experiences of that, and hopefully that will help as well. You know, you get that, I don't know, just social acceptance that we can talk about struggles.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
I think it's definitely getting better. When I had that chat in the pub with some of the football lads, it was at that moment I was like 10, 12 years ago, no chance.
Yeah.
Not a single, no, there's no chance that we would be having this conversation. But we were sitting there in a busy pub, just talking openly about mental health, about the struggles that we'd all been through. And I was like, this is fantastic. Great.
But we need to, don't we? You know,
and especially someone from like who's suffered with mental health, looking, I don't know why I feel a lot closer to somebody else that has also it's weird. I don't know what you would call that, but I just feel like there's a bit more of a connection when I've heard someone's story like that. Like I'm in them.
Yeah. Well, you start to, it's personal information.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you know, whether that's that they've struggled with mental health or it's just them sharing an experience from their past.
Yeah.
You become more engaged in their background and their life.
Yeah.
You know, you can sit in the pub and watch and chat about the footy all day long, but you're not becoming any closer to anybody.
Yeah. You've gone from a different stage of friendship.
Yeah. I think so.
We're just looking through your notes.
Yeah. I'm just seeing if there's anything that I scribbled down that might be of note. I think the main thing for me was that, you know, my method of communicating to people was obviously very different to yours, both in terms of the immediacy of it and also the method. But talking to those people had a massive impact. You know, I wasn't having conversations with dad, brother, sister about it, but them knowing was a weight off massively.
Yeah.
You know, even now, so with my partner, so her developing our understanding, if I'm starting to experience anxiety at something, basically I have like a timeout. That's like our code word. Not particularly subtle in terms of the phrasing of it, but essentially it's just like, I need to get out. I need to have a couple of minutes.
Yeah. And is it a couple of minutes?
It can vary. It can be a couple of minutes. It can be like 15 minutes.
So at a door of a party, have you needed a timeout?
It could be like middle of party.
Okay.
So like we went to an event with, it was an event that I organised a table for with loads of my mates. Again, like some of my best friends, and I had to go and chill out for 15 minutes because just that big social setting became too much. But having my partner as an ally in that and somebody that's aware of it and sort of supporting it, even just, I don't know, if someone says, "Oh, where's Alan gone?" Just knowing that somebody's there sort of covering for. So I think the biggest thing for me reflecting on it was that I've got those people around me that have very different roles in supporting me, whether that's supporting me silently or actively supporting me when I experience those triggers. It has made a huge impact on me.
Do you reckon you'd ever get to a time where if someone was to say to your partner, "Where's Alan gone?" they could say, he's just gone for a timeout?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think about an event a few weeks back that I failed to go to. And I basically messaged my mate to say, "I'm really sorry, mate, I'm not coming. Can't make it." And there were a couple of valid reasons, But my main reason was that I was really anxious about going to a room full of people that I don't really know and the social event. And in the end, I messaged him the following day and said, like, "Mate, I'm really sorry, but I was just really anxious. Like, I was really struggling with the idea of walking through the door." And he was great. Like, of course he would be. So I'm trying to be more open in that.
You've been a best man as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Been one and being one at the moment.
So you've been a best man at a wedding with half of the people are new.
Yeah.
And you've had to stand up and talk.
I think about this quite a lot. For me, organisation is a massive thing. So organisation and a plan, that's part of the reason I've got the nose.
Well, knowledge is power.
Yeah. And having stuff broken down. So, we're talking about clearing this stuff up tomorrow. It's gone on my list because I've got a list of things I'm doing tomorrow because I like a plan. Change and lack of control, lack of structure. So the fact that I was delivering that speech with months of preparation, I've gone through draft 1 through to 78 and rehearsed it and read it to whoever to sort of listen to and go through it, helped by the fact that it was my best mate and his now wife is my oldest friend. So a room full of more familiar people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's weird. Like standing up and delivering something that I've prepared, easier than walking into a room full of people that will look over, not care that I've entered in reality, and will crack on with their conversation.
Yeah, because I guess everything from then on is unprepared.
Yeah.
You don't know what's coming.
Yeah. And it's bizarre. Like our minds work in weird ways, but yeah, I hope I'll get to a position of just being able to be more open about it. I hope we all will. That's the point of this, isn't it? That we try to encourage people to talk.
That is the hope.
Yeah.
And we'll get people on here to talk more and more. So I don't know if you've got any more on your list or your notes.
What was in my notes? I'll end up referring back to these all the time, I think.
Because we have some questions on the...
I saw some questions came through. Not really. I think just being able to know that people know was genuinely a weight off, and through chatting to particularly students, but also people, there is that fear of talking about it. And for me, that fear was overcome by writing. I was better at putting my thoughts onto paper and, like the best man speech, editing it and changing it and editing it and changing it over several months to a point where I felt like it reflected how I felt and where I was. So I think that was sort of the main point throughout mine, was that by talking to people, I've managed to sort of move forward a little bit. So no, nothing else.
Okay.
Give me some questions.
So, yeah, we did the same thing. We went onto our Instagram and asked the people to ask some questions for us. The first one is actually from me. Got to push the engagement up.
Go on then.
Is there anything you do daily that helps your mental health? So like brushing your teeth to keep your teeth clean. Do you do anything?
The big thing for me is exercise. There's a few things I'd say I do regularly. One is exercise. When I feel physically fit, that has a positive impact on me. You can talk about endorphins and stuff, but for me, just that feeling like I am fit and improving in my health and fitness is quite big for me. You mentioned that I'm running quite a lot at the moment. That is to raise money and awareness for a charity, which I think comes back to a question that somebody's going to ask in a second. Yep. But it's also for me. I run to stay fit, stay healthy, to make myself feel better. I try to be really aware of how I feel. So there will be days where I wake up and I feel anxious and I might not know why. Often it'll be something that's happening that week or that day that's just having a negative impact on me. And actually just having an awareness of the fact that I feel a bit crap sometimes can be enough. Yep. Like, fine, I feel low today. I need to approach today a little bit differently. Which is completely normal. Yeah. Everybody can feel low. And everyone can feel anxious. My first session with the person I'm seeing now at Mind, she said, but anxiety is normal. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh yeah, it is. Yeah. If somebody said they're anxious, they could be anxious about anything. That's what I try. That's the best way I try to explain to people what it is that I feel. So we all get anxious. If I said to you, you've got an exam tomorrow, you're going to be anxious because you've got an exam tomorrow. Now take away the exam tomorrow and keep the same symptoms. And then that's what I have. Yeah. I don't have a reason to be anxious. I'm getting those symptoms, but
for nothing.
But I think that awareness is what I try to incorporate each day. You know, how do I feel? If I feel crap, how do I go about managing my day from that point onwards, so that it doesn't affect others, ideally, and so it doesn't sort of boil over. The time out thing, you know, being willing to. I don't particularly use it every day, but there'll be a couple of times a week where I'll go and sit down for 5 minutes, have a couple of minutes to just stop, breathe, crack on again. I'd say they're the main things I take forward.
Yeah, it's good. This isn't a question, but going back to your running, you've got a lot of running to do in a year.
Yeah.
Coming here today to set up this podcast gave me anxiety. There's a lot to do. You've got a long year. Is that affecting you at all? Or is it sort of
it affects me both ways. One, there's the positive of the fact that I am, as a result of running. So for context, I'm running 2,022 kilometers in 2022 for the Grace Crocker Family Support Foundation. So a charity that supports families in Jersey with children receiving care in the UK. So you're right, it averaged about 5.5K a day. I'm at about 860 kilometers so far, which is like 73 hours worth of running. So fitting that in is tough, but it goes back to what I said before about structure and routine. So a lot of my running is before school. So I'll get up, I'll run it, I don't know, 5:15, 5:30. Often actually see Stuart Truscott, who sent a question last time, and I think he's got a question for me. He's out for his morning walks. Then I'll go to work and I'll crack on. So just part of my routine. That structure is a really useful thing for me. Sometimes the need to go out, or the feeling like I need to go out and run, can force a change in my routine, which can be less positive. I would say overall, though, it's having a positive impact.
Good. I don't know if Trussie's
we can go with it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, talking about Trussie, he's asked, who is your dad's favourite child?
Cheers, Trussie. So for context, Trussie is the coach that Coleman named as his favourite coach. Coached us at the mighty Roselle. Favourite child is, you're asking really, Trussie, whether it's me and my brother. The answer is my sister. She is the favourite by a mile. The golden child. Right. So we'll leave that one there.
Okay. What do you do to stay motivated and focused in your work and personal life?
The work one's easy because that's about trying to have an impact upon others. You know, going back to coping strategies, this all links back to childhood stuff. Basically, my mum left when I was 15, 16. And there's lots of unpicking to do there. But my response at that time, I think, was to just be busy, go and play sport, do things, get out. Work provides me with the same sort of thing. You know, I am motivated by being busy and being challenged, and hopefully by being sort of good at what I do. I always try to learn and be better, but that's not a massive issue for me. The other part to the question was motivating.
It was in your work
and personal life.
Personal
life is again, it's just keeping sort of targets and challenges fresh. You know, can I try to do something? Can I plan something? Can I have something to look forward to?
Well, your man's just started playing golf.
Yeah, I have my first golf lesson today, which
is a great thing.
Thank you very much to Ross at the Royal for his patience in trying to get me to actually hit a ball properly. Long way to go, but so things like that, you know, just different challenges, trying to do something new, something different, something to look forward to.
You'll enjoy that one, trust me, it's great. Okay, so this one we're going to go for it. It's a bit of a difficult one, but do you feel there is adequate support for those suffering with mental health illness in Jersey?
This is hard, isn't it? And we spoke about this off camera and off mic, because I don't know that either of us are in a position to really be able to properly comment on that in terms of our experiences and whether we've...
Yeah, so from my side, I've been fortunate enough to have had private support. I couldn't tell you what's offered publicly, and I wouldn't want to comment because of that. But
There's lots of talk, isn't there, about waiting lists and lack of service, and people who are in some of those professions that can provide support, perhaps leaving the island or whatever it might be.
I think that might be just an issue of the current times.
I think that's
COVID.
everywhere.
Yeah.
In terms of any sort of career or area in Jersey, I think there'd be people leaving the island or struggling to recruit in certain areas. So honestly, I don't really know. I think there can always be more. I think thinking about students who are waiting to access support, I know that some of the mental health services are experiencing backlog and struggling to meet demand. Hopefully we are getting to a point where there's so much awareness around these issues that there are more roles being made available.
Yeah.
So I think there can always be more, but I'm going to sort of sit on the fence and not be too controversial with the answer.
Yeah. What I would say is that the support and some of the people that I've been to have been absolutely fantastic. I have not had a single bad experience. The first, I wish I remember the first guy's name that I had CBT was, because he was so patient with me. I went through every single emotion that you could possibly think of. I was an 18-year-old kid. He was amazing. He literally has changed my life, and the fact I don't know his name is just kills me. And the guy I see now, I've been with him for a year and a half, and honestly, what I would do without it, I just need that time to offload the brain space, because if I hold on to it and I don't speak, it shows itself in the worst possible way. So yeah, the support has been fantastic for me.
Yeah, I've been fortunate as well. I think where I've been to look for support, it's been there and it's helped.
What's your next challenge? I think this is referring to running.
It is, yeah. So we had Coneheads, didn't we, last year? So it was finding the best ice cream in Jersey.
This is your next challenge.
But to be honest with you, the next challenge will be to not have a challenge. 2023, if I can not have a challenge that requires an Instagram account and to achieve things over a long period of time, that'd be fantastic.
But you just keep showing up. I'll do the Instagram.
I'm just not sure that'll be the case. Because as I said before, part of keeping me motivated and fresh is to find new challenges and things to do. So don't know. For now, I'll concentrate on getting through my running kilometers.
Okay, I think that's it.
Through it.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, thank you very much for saying that. It's actually amazing the fact that you've decided to do this on a podcast. I'm hoping after this comes out, you'll receive lots of lovely messages. And talking about that, since we've been sitting here, I mean, we've been in this room for about 3 or 4 hours. We've received messages during this, and all we've released so far is the teaser, and everybody is just so positive. The messages are really, really nice. Keep them coming, because they make it all worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes setting all this up and sitting here, just makes it all worthwhile.
So get in touch about things you want to see and hear included as well. We've said before, we are not experts. We are not in a position to offer advice and counselling or anything like that, but we want to be able to have open conversations.
Yeah, and we've had even on Twitter people saying, things that we've not thought about. Why not talk about ADHD and autism? I mean, hopefully this platform, we talk about everything. By the end of this podcast, I hope that we've covered everything from all areas, from people suffering to people that help. But yeah,
see what we can cover.
Yeah, absolutely. GG's, that was really good.
Cheers, pal.
And thank you everybody for listening, and we hope to see you at the next episode.
See you soon.